welcome. My name is Lloyd Borrell. I'm your host. Today, I'm thrilled to have as my guest, Josh Del Sol Beaulieu. Josh Del Sol is a documentary filmmaker and rights advocate who's passionate about restoring safe technology. In 2014, his documentary, Take Back Your Power, investigating the smart grid, won a plethora of awards. In 2017, Josh co-founded In Power Movement, which is pioneering a process to enforce commercial liability to halt harmful technologies such as smart meters, 5G, and mandatory unsafe vaccination. Josh Del Sol Beaulieu, welcome to the EMF Health Summit.
Thanks so much, Lloyd. Great to be on.
So, Take Back Your Power. That was a phenomenal success. Came out a few years ago, winner of numerous prestigious awards. It was and is a revelatory film about smart meters. So I'd like to ask you, what was it that motivated you to make this film?
I'll just preempt that by saying, first of all, we're very pleased to announce by the time this airs, Lloyd, Take Back Your Power 2017, the final version is going to be released freely, completely free on takebackyourpower.net permanently. So people will be able to watch it for free on takebackyourpower.net. I'm very pleased about that. What motivated to make Take Back Your Power was basically I was in a life transition late 2010, early 2011, and I wasn't able to continue to do the type of work that I was doing, government contracts and building websites for organizations that I didn't really believe in. And when one of them started promoting vaccination in terms of mandatory vaccination without looking at the risks and the damage it might be doing, then that was against a bit of my philosophy. It's a bit of a contentious issue for some, but I was aware of the health risks of that. And so that was kind of the last straw. So several months later, putting an intention out there for something that, I can do effectively to be of service, I came across the so-called smart meter problem and started to hear in British Columbia how these smart meters were intended to be rolling out imminently at the time in 2011. And already in California, people were getting sick and the thousands and, more, but officially in the thousands and probably in the tens of thousands were reporting to their utilities, like, this is a problem. This is affecting my life. I'm not able to sleep. I have ringing in my ears. I have heart palpitations, or my quality of life, or autoimmune, or cancer's returned, or all these symptoms. And in addition to that, the privacy, we know now that they are and were intended to be a surveillance platform, a residential surveillance platform, extracting data from the home. And that has been admitted to be worth more than the electricity, and eventually going to be worth more than the electricity itself. So this residential surveillance industry, which is unlawful, was coming in, and I started to see problems there, obviously. But what the thing that made me decide to, okay, I need to film something and I need to get this out in a video medium, was when a good friend of mine fell ill, and she didn't know that the meter was installed until after the symptoms started. So she dated back the time when she wasn't able to sleep as good and had skin rashes and nausea, back to the time when she received that little notice on her door handle or whatever it was to say that BC Hydro installed the smart meter. And so I wanted to get to the bottom of it, really. And that's, as alluded to in the start of Take Back Your Power, that's what put me on this journey to get to the bottom of this thing, to verify it and to find out how deep the rabbit hole goes and to see what we can do about it.
Yeah. And so for people that are listening that maybe have never heard of a smart meter, have got no idea what that is, perhaps there still are some people, it's a utility meter. It can be gas meter, electric meter, water meter, which can transmit data back to the utility company. Can be wireless, or it can be broadband over power line. That's to say, using the power line. Either way, it creates electronic pollution. And as you say, this is the most remarkable thing the most remarkable observation that we can have is that there are countless, even on my website, Electric Sense, there are countless testimonials from people who are don't know anything about this and not aware that there was the smart meters, that smart meters existed or that had been introduced. And then they discover, subsequent to it being introduced, that they have fallen sick. And there's some horror stories out there, really, as to how just how sick people have been subsequent to this, and which obviously the utility companies saying correlation is not caused, blah, 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 that it's nothing to do with their...
And that it's officially safe, it's officially under the government guidelines, and it's less emissions than the government says is safe. And of course, they don't look at any of the science. They don't look at anything but actually heating the cells past a certain number of degrees in a certain amount of time. So you have to cook the cells. Literally, you have to cook the body tissue in order for the powers that be, the agencies that are owned by industry now, completely owned by industry, to admit that there's a problem. So there is a huge problem here. And obviously the same dynamic of faking the science or not doing the studies at all and then ramming the technology through is now at hand with 5G. So this is a big wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people. And I'm really happy to see that more and more people are actually becoming aware of our electrical environment and wanting to see change there.
Yes, and this environment is changing very fast with all these technologies, with these wireless technologies, and with this evolution, as you say, of these wireless technologies, and that's where we're going, 5G, which we've talked about with various guests. And so, yeah, I'm the eternal optimist. So and there is change underfoot that I can feel. Yeah. I really believe that we are going, perhaps not immediately in the right direction, but at some time we're going to veer off into the right direction. Helping us veer off in this right direction, perhaps is this InPower movement, which you launched, I don't know, a year or so ago. I remember I had you on my podcast and we talked about it there. Mm-hmm. You are now ambassador and content creator for that. So let's talk about that, because
Sure.
People want to hear about solutions and what to do, because obviously it's important to understand the dangers, but then what do we do about them? And this, so let's talk about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So after releasing Take Back Your Power, I was a little bit disillusioned, to be honest. I mean, maybe 500,000 people have seen it. We've had hundreds and hundreds of official screenings all over the world. We've done three free viewing periods previous to now this permanently free viewing periods, and maybe had, like I mentioned, 500,000 or so views. But nothing effectively changed, Lloyd, because this agenda continued to go forward. So I was a little bit, maybe a little bit of an idealist with my intention of making the documentary and my expectation, my attachment to that outcome of,
yes.
Of it's going to, all this information is going to get out. It's going to be an amazing documentary and people are going to see how harmful it is, and it's just going to be stopped. It's going to be turned around. But what actually happened was that everybody kind of saw how legitimate the problem was. And but that being said, there are so many excellent health advocates and rights advocates and activists out there. It's not just Take Back Your Power, but Take Back Your Power helped to further the awareness of the smart meter problem. But nothing actually changed because I began to understand that it didn't interface with the reality in a way that got to the root of the problem. It didn't get to the core of the problem. And I started to see that as money. I started to see that as this is just business.
Yeah. This
is literally the Cellular Telecommunications Industry Association running the FCC. There's a revolving door of senior lobbyists, and it's not just the United States, but that's kind of the epicenter of it. And they just want to make billions. literally, I mean, if you look at that 5G announcement from former FCC Chair Tom Wheeler, he's like, you can see the dollar signs in his eyes as he says tens of billions of dollars of economic activity. That's all it is. And so we need to start, maybe we're, as activists and advocates, we're putting our heart and soul into this thing, and we're pleading with them. We're saying, you guys are killing me, for those of us that are having, harsh, intense symptoms. And there's a lot of people out there that are. This is real. If you're watching this and you're experiencing that, that's real. And you're not alone, and you're not crazy, and you deserve help. But the ironic thing, Lloyd, is that this, if we want to just look through the lens of duality consciousness for a minute, this other side, they're not moved by compassion. They're not moved by the greater good. They're not moved by, first do no harm. They're moved by how much, power and money can this accrue, because I don't know how far deep you want to go, but essentially because there's a disconnect between mind and heart. So there's a lot of polarity right now amongst humanity, obviously, and it's kind of being played out in many different areas. And this aspect of harmful technology and harmful wireless technology versus the people that are being harmed and trying to speak up and signing tens of thousands of signatures on petitions and doing, Facebook activism and emails and getting together and even class action lawsuits, Lloyd. People are, I just saw another one in Australia. It's awesome to see that. And Quebec and France and different places. Outstanding to see that. But I think what led to the creation of the Empower movement was the realization that we have to get to the core of the problem. So I had met Cal Washington, who turned out to be my co-founding partner. And Empower Movement has been soft launched since August of last year, 2017. But I met him around 2008, 2009. And then around 2014 is when we really started talking about, look, we got to, I didn't make Take Back Your Power so that I could be famous or win awards or whatever. Like, we need to stop this problem, and nothing is stopping it so far. What can we do? Can we do some of the same stuff, Cal, that has you, in courts and judges running out of the courtroom? Can we do the same stuff that has you, doing paperwork sending it directly to high-level politicians and has them resigning from office? I understood at the time that several individuals were doing powerful, game-changing, paradigm-shifting stuff like this, but never before has there been a movement, an organized movement, where we're teaching and we're educating, we're guiding and supporting, giving the actual documents, the templates and the support, and the community is part of this next phase of Empower, to the people to actually access this level of, I believe it's a higher level of solution in an organized way. So that's what kind of inspired me, was the idea of, well, why don't we try this out? Why don't we get 20 or 25 people together and put some, we'll customize this notice of liability process for the so-called smart meter issue, dangerous meter problem. And we'll do this. It's multiple rounds. It's laying the groundwork for enforcement. So it's not just one document and then you slap a lien on somebody. That's what gets you put in jail if you don't know what you're doing. There are some people who have tried to, use commerce in an ineffective or incomplete or haphazard way without knowledge, who have been made examples of, to say, oh, look, there's a media article. There was one in the Chicago Times, I think, last year, and even in Canada, to exemplify, the media uses to exemplify somebody, using commerce who doesn't know what they're doing and is doing it vexatiously. That's not what the Empower movement is. And that is done on purpose so that you don't start to ask questions. Well, if it's all about business, then how does commerce actually work? What's really going on here? And how can we get to the solution that interfaces with their system? So that's a little, I maybe tangentialize that a bit, Lloyd, but that's a little bit of the background for what's happening for the the reasons for In-Power movement coming together. And we have seen from those initial 3 seed groups or prototype groups, we have seen a number of significant number of resignations from people that were holding liable. One example out of about 10 or 12 from those 3 initial groups was the CEO of Corix Utilities in Vancouver is the company that was installing 1.8 million meters. And on 4 days after, he got 100 plus notices from the Kelowna seed group there. He resigned without notice. There was no, Business in Vancouver wrote it up, and this clip is shown in episode 1 of In-Power docuseries, which people can watch for free on inpowermovement.com. Mm-hmm. So basically that was written up in Business in Vancouver that he quit without notice. There was a board meeting 4 days after getting 100 notices of liability, and the same day, according to Canada Post Mail, that CAL's separate notice of default on a process that he was doing behind the scenes came in. So that's not an isolated incident. There's been, like I said, about 10 to 12 such resignations happening just from pockets of people doing this in the 3 different seed group locations. So in the past year, there's been more groups coming on board, but it's been really organic. And In-Power Movement is in the process of developing the next phase, which is going to make it super simple for people to do. It's kind of a complex process, but we're going to make it super simple, templated with support, community, and kind of build it out to go from just people resigning to we need to have an organized movement of an effective action and stop these agendas. That's the original intention of the In-Power movement. So that was my first kind of aha, that we need to get to the core of the problem and our best the best idea to do that came forth was the In-Power movement. So it's a very powerful, very effective process, and it's definitely ruffling some feathers, and not everyone agrees with it, and that's okay. But it's very much intended to serve the greater good and to protect all individual rights going forward.
Yeah, to serve the greater good, and it's this higher level of solution, as you say, and it operates by this notice of liability process, which we talked about before. And so my question is this about, so people understand clearly what this movement is exactly. So is it about making heads roll, bringing the big guys down, and therefore this smart meter deployment down? Or is it about, well, I've got a smart meter on my home and I don't want it, therefore this is what you do, this process to do that? What is it? Which of those is it?
It's both. It's a very good question, but it's both. It's like, as you walk out the process of playing the game, what we would say correctly in commerce, because that's the way they look at you. They see that you haven't said no in the correct way, and so you are a merchant who has agreed to get the benefits of the smart meter on your house. And even if you write a letter to say no, they'll still follow that up with another letter. And because you didn't respond correctly to that one within 10 days, according to Uniform Commercial Code and different aspects of commerce, you are deemed to have accepted their terms, and they'll keep on you like that until that you can demonstrate your knowledge and play the game correctly. But it is as we change the terms. So this is an important part of like this human awakening that I believe is happening. And like you, I am an optimist. I'm also like, oh shit, we got to do something. But I'm also like seeing that I'm an optimist and seeing that there, in the larger context, people are, enough people, let's say, are waking up and choosing to be part of the solution. Mm-hmm. And it's not, we don't need 51% of the people to wake up and engage, Lloyd. It's, when you look at like even quantum physics researchers and the 100th monkey syndrome, and, people have actually identified, one such figure is 1/10 of 1%. The Cal talks about really waking up and engaging and getting on track of this new paradigm where we're truly empowered. then that begins to shift out to the rest of the humanity. You know, and in monkeys, it was to the rest of the species after, I believe, a certain type of monkey found out how to, wash their potatoes in salt water or something like this. It went to virally across the planet after one figured it out, or one group figured it out. So there are these quantum type ideas, these quantum physics ideas that are now coming up in my field of awareness to really, it seems like there's so much kind of converging and aligning with new ways that we can look at changing our environment that maybe we can talk about if there's time. But the bottom line, to get back to your question, is by changing the terms and by assuming that you have the right of free will and contract, and if somebody's harming you, you have the right to say no, even if their court system is corrupt. You still have that right to say no. So commerce, the way that Cal explains it in episode 1, I highly encourage everyone to watch episode 1, is commerce is at a level above the level at which, the corporate level at which a lot of these laws are being passed in the United States and elsewhere to ram these agendas through and to absolve themselves of liability. Well, commerce operates above that, and it's individual to individual, or man or woman met to man or woman. So because of that, because it has the possibility to get to the root of the problem, to force resignations, and hopefully we intend to eventually, change direction for humanity. As you get a couple people together, so basically you get a couple witnesses and you go to a notary and you sign and send the documents, or you get a group together.
So let's take this from the beginning. For instance, somebody receives notification that they're going to get this smart meter installed on their property, and they don't want it. And they hear about InPower, so what do? They go to your website, then what do they do?
Yeah. Either if you get a notice or years after you have a smart meter on your house, this process is still valid. You can do this at any time, no matter if you have an analog or a smart meter or anything in between. But basically, what we recommend to do is go to inpowermovement.com, watch episode 1, and then you have the option of either doing the process immediately, sending the template is set up as 4 respondents. So pick 4 people you want to hold liable, such as the CEO of the utility company, such as a couple of legislators, and maybe the governor. And then complete that template, mail it in with, as mentioned, either 2 witnesses, and you notarize the document, or you just get a group of 6 or 10 or 20 people together, and you do this in a group, and that can be very powerful. And then you mail your documents in directly. So that's available right now. The other option is to get on the mailing list, and as the next phase of InPower Movement releases, then you'll be notified, and there'll be more support and resources and ways to do the documents, like pretty, very simply.
Right.
To get groups together, and a bunch of stuff is happening behind the scenes right now.
Right. So you said that there's been executives which have been resigning, but what about in that case, which you've just described? The person who's got notification they're going to get the smart meter, or they've already got the smart meter and they want it removed. Have you had any? Are there any success stories there where that's happened, that's transpired? They've got the thing removed, or they've prevented it from being installed. Yeah,
well, it's interesting. It's almost like, kind of we're bringing this intended to be this true solution forward, and at the same time, it's like the other side is amping up their, force, like this poker game that the stakes are going up, and we have yet to both sides have yet to show their hand, sort of. What we noticed was and this is in episode 1, one of the seed groups is in Michigan, and out of the 14 people who started with an analog meter, 4 years later, while everyone else was being installed upon, 13 of them, 3 years later, I think, 13 of the 14 kept their analog meter while installations were happening elsewhere. Now, as soon as we put that episode 1 out, it seemed like the resistance level went up. So what does that mean? Does that mean the process doesn't work? No. But it means that there is, and a similar thing happened actually in Hawaii, where someone did a similar process to the notice of liability, not our process. But initially, there was a positive response from the president of Maui Electric. And then literally the next day after I put a podcast, it's weird. I'm not saying like one thing directly led to another, but maybe just in the, quantum or the consciousness or whatever. Literally the next day, that positive decision was announced to basically, start going in the other direction and being effectively reversed. So basically both sides are kind of, it's this time of like picking what side you're on, and things are kind of ramping up. But what we're realizing is at some point, just to be frank, at some point, we're actually going to have to enforce as a movement. And it's obvious, it's clear. If it's a liability process, the other side, because they have so much potentially to gain by continuing their agendas, they're going to continue to push that until that there's a realization that what we're doing, because it's their system, we're using their system against them. It's legitimate in all, areas of objective, fact by anyone in their system. It is a legitimate process. And secondly, we're going to need to enforce so that there is a realization by, enough people within their system that, it's real. It's not what their lawyers are telling them, that it's bunk, but the actual judges, for example, and the higher, more educated lawyers know the legitimacy of the process. It's what they use, the more educated ones. But that I think, Lloyd, that is gonna happen. And so it's this process of, and as this happens, in Power and others, we're bringing out more and more information and truth and awareness, so that if you plug into this, and even if you're not sure about it, but you just start to follow the content that's going to be coming out and the discussions, especially after the next phase is released, you can make up your own mind.
Yes.
And see for yourself, and then and at the same time, continue to do your own, I would say, inner work of not going into fear, connecting, I would say, your heart and your mind, and just, getting in that flow of the things that inspire you and the things that are available solutions to you at this time. Yes. As you evaluate and see Empower Movement as, like what we're saying, it's part of a longer term solution. Like the conversation, what I'm getting at, Lloyd, is the conversation that's going to be unfolding is going to be very, very interesting. And we believe that it's going to be a part of helping to shift humanity's course by for the first time saying no effectively to the things that we don't want, so that we can create a better future for everyone.
So it's working. There is resistance, not surprisingly. The objective is to beat them at their own game. So, because it's legal what they're doing, but it's also legal what you're doing, and it is complicated. Therefore, that's the whole reason for the Empower Movement, is that you guys figure out this complicated process, and then you share it with everybody, and everybody works together to make this to make it work at a bigger level, at a society level, perhaps.
Yeah.
But then we've got this situation where, so for instance, somebody is listening who's got this smart meter on and is playing havoc with their health, and they're looking for a solution, an immediate solution, because this movement is, it's not as if you're going to send the letter today and tomorrow it's going to be resolved. What I'm saying is, if you are suffering from adverse health symptoms, adverse health effects through your smart meter, what you believe is your smart meter, so you need to do something about it. Therefore, one doesn't exclude the other, so we can still look to practical, hands-on solutions in terms of shielding as to dealing with that. Perhaps we could talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. And still writing them a letter, even before you do the NOL, or demanding to get the smart meter off your house. I mean, that's the first step, is to engage your utility, even with a phone call or a letter. We recommend to do everything in writing. Pay the opt-out fee if you need to, but initially you want to call them out on that extortion. And you want to say, like, the only reason why I'm paying this is under duress, because you're harming me and you're extorting me. And then put that in writing. When you accept the opt-out program, you say, I accept this only under duress because I am being harmed, and this is extortion, and this is my only immediate solution. So get the thing off your house. Demand an analog meter if at all possible, because many of the opt-out RF off meters are actually transmitting. There's evidence on that that's available.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. So just if you can clarify that, you're saying that the meters that they're saying are not radio frequency microwave transmitting meters are doing that?
Yeah, many, Lloyd, and this has been at least in 2 or 3 different locations. People have taken testing devices like, we recommend the Cornet, and there's a new testing device we're considering as well. But like an inexpensive electromagnetic testing device is very, very valuable, especially going forward in your process of cleaning up your environment. But holding that next to an RF off opt-out meter, it's still pulsing in many, many cases. So this is fraud that's being committed by utilities. It seems systemic because it's not just one utility. This has been observed with several different opt-out programs. So really demand an analog meter if at all possible, and only accept the opt-out under duress. And the other thing too is mitigate EMF in the meantime. So
absolutely. So just to go back, so we'll talk about that in 1 second. Just want to dive into that point there. So, because sometimes we can't opt out, can we? This is what I'm hearing, because people contact me and they're saying, well, I want to opt out, but we can't opt out. So sometimes there is no opportunity there's no possibility to opt out. Therefore, we do have to shield, and there are shielding solutions. Obviously, as you say here, the key is to take readings for yourself, so so you understand, so you've got the facts, and an EMF meter like the Cornet, for instance, the Cornet ED88T Plus, it's called now. It keeps getting a bit of a name, but that's a good one. There's lots of meters out there that can do this, fairly inexpensive meters that are sufficiently sensitive for this. And that's the first thing, obviously, get those readings. Is it emitting microwave radio frequency radiation, yes or no? And if it is, while you're following through with this due process, this legal process, through your movement, then at the same time, in parallel, to do shielding of some sort. Agreed?
I agree, and I've come to that realization more and more. There's a couple of different ways that this conversation could go, but definitely, I'll just tell you, Lloyd, this whole process of me making Take Back Your Power and starting the Empower movement, and up till several months ago, I never had firsthand experiential health effects, biological effects from wireless. I never did. Mm-hmm. So what happened was I moved into a new home around March of this year. There was no signal. No cell signal. I have a cell phone. I never use it obviously next to my head, and I use it sparingly. But there was no cell signal for texting. So I had to actually reluctantly use Wi-Fi. So you can use with Verizon, at least, and some other carriers, you can use Wi-Fi calling, which is also texting. What I noticed was a week or two after turning on Wi-Fi on my phone, both hands, I started to exhibit what I would call, it felt like nerve inflammation. On both hands, the nerve, whatever it is, that comes down the middle of my hand and then the middle of my finger. Coincidentally, with having Wi-Fi on my phone and having it in my hands. So I had that for 2 weeks. That prompted me to say, okay, this is ridiculous. I need to do something about this, but I still need to somehow use my phone because I, communicate with it that way. So what I did was I researched how can I wire my phone, and can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so this is my phone is now wired. Whenever I'm at home or in my office here, I don't use the Wi-Fi anymore, and that the Wi-Fi that the landlords have in the other suite is shielded, so it doesn't come in here, or very little anyway. So, but basically, this looks like kind of quite a contraption, but this is how it works: is there's two adapters. One is called the Apple USB to camera, or Lightning to USB camera. So
Correct.
Apple Lightning to USB camera. And we're not obviously using it as a camera, but what it is it has a USB out and a Lightning power out. So this Lightning power out still connects into the wall like normal, like it would up here. But this USB now connects into the second adapter. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. This is the Apple USB to Ethernet. So this is wired internet. And I tried a different second adapter, which didn't work because it didn't supply enough power to the device, or it took too much power actually.
Yes.
So it didn't actually work. So on my phone, this is an iPhone 6, it's a couple years old, but these two adapters, you can get them on, wherever online, enabled me to wire my phone so that I told most of my, regular contacts that please don't use regular texting. You can contact me on one of these two apps. Which I use Voxer and Telegram.
Okay.
So, and this is, my hands started to get better, Lloyd. Like I'm telling you, like it just became this higher level of like, I realized that, experienced it myself for the first time. My hands started to get better within a week of me shutting off the Wi-Fi on my phone. Mm-hmm. And so as far as technologies go, really quickly, can I tell your audience about one other thing I found?
Sure. Yeah. We're all ears for solutions.
Okay. So I, 2 years ago, came across something called MoCA, MoCA, that stands for Multimedia Over Coaxial Alliance, I think. So what that means is you can look it up, MoCA, and then the current one is MoCA 2, so version 2. That allows you to have a router in your house with the Wi-Fi turned off, but the router exports the internet to this MoCA adapter that plugs into the wall in your cable out, in any cable outlet in your house. Cable meaning your TV, cable TV outlet in any room, and hopefully there's one close to where you have your wired router. So, and then you have the other adapter, the other MoCA adapter, where you want to pick up the internet. So if you have 4 different locations where you want to have wired internet in your house without having, these Ethernet cords going from the router to the rest of your house, you can have 4 of these adapters, 1 in each room. And what I found with this, Lloyd, is so sending the internet using these MoCA technology throughout your house, using the cabled wiring that's already pre-built in most houses. It's faster than Wi-Fi, and it's faster than power line communication. Okay, that's the other one I tested, actually. I haven't released this video yet, but I tested Wi-Fi, power line communication, and MoCA. So MoCA is the fastest. It's the safest because it does not produce any dirty electricity. And it's just the best overall solution. I mean, there's no, it's aesthetically the best. The power line technology, when I tested it, when it was, for example, communicating like a YouTube video or something high bandwidth, the dirty electricity went through the roof. So if you're watching this and you switch to power line because you don't want to have Wi-Fi on your computer or in your house, and if you're still having symptoms, then really check into this. Okay, there's no wireless radiation with power line, but there is dirty electricity that I've found. Mm-hmm. So, check out MoCA technology, and if you have cable TV outlets, it might be a really, really good solution for finally a clean internet signal that then doesn't degrade or whatever throughout your house.
Yeah. That's great information you're sharing there, which very few people are aware of, I'm sure. And lots of alternatives to wireless, contrary to what we might think, because there's so much information out there about wireless. It seems we can't live without it. That's that's what they want to believe. But there are lots of solutions for this. And just one I want to put out there while we're talking about this wireless issue is actually shielding your smart meter in itself. Is actually very simple. Again, you do need this EMF meter, but you can buy smart meter guards, which fit over the top of the meter. One thing I will say is that, and again, I've got to reiterate this, because you can't just buy the smart meter guard or the shielding and assume that it's problem solved. You do need to take readings with an EMF meter, either borrow one, buy one, get one from somewhere. You need to have the readings, because one area where people sometimes go wrong is they put this smart meter guard on, but that actually, it depends, how this is in relation to your property, your home, because that's what you're wanting to protect. And sometimes people are putting the smart meter on, and it's actually, it's like shielding everybody but them, because the signal's going out the back where they are. Therefore, we need to shield actually the back behind, where this smart meter is. Again, which is not particularly difficult, but we do need to, there are lots of places online, for instance, lessemf.com, which is a great resource, where you can buy inexpensive materials to shield from this kind of radiation.
Yeah, and it is, I just want to touch in, you don't want to stop there. Okay, there's short, medium, and long-term solutions. And maybe, do we have a few minutes left to get into that?
Sure.
Okay, so short-term solution is like we're talking about now. Get if you can afford it, it's between $150 and $200. The CoreNet meters that Lloyd is talking about, we also refer people to them from our website, takebackyourpower.net, and shield your smart meter. Although I will say that does nothing to reduce the dirty electricity. That does, however, apparently quite effectively, reduce the wireless transmission. And I've found personally EMF blanketing, like an EMF blanket. It's most important. If you can mitigate the EMF where you sleep, that preserves your body's ability to heal at night, right? So that's minimizing the effect of peroxynitrite and everything else that comes from the environmental hazards like EMF. So I actually sleep with a EMF blanket, and it just, on the subtle level, it just feels better. I don't know. So,
okay. But is that like a sleeping bag, or is it just when you put over the top? How does that work?
The one that I have is just over the top. But obviously, if you're experiencing symptoms more directly, then try a sleeping bag, or there's bedding with the full 360 degrees coverage that many people are finding their ability to cope living, especially close to towers and smart meters, and is improved with this kind of technology. So measurement and mitigation is the short term.
Yes.
The midterm solution, what I would say, is in-power movement, because the notice of liability process is getting to the core of the problem in the ways that we've already described.
Yes.
So that, I feel, is a longer term, but not the longest term solution. The longest term solution, Lloyd, that's coming up kind of in my field of awareness is shifting our own perspective so that we truly can know what it means and walk out the process of being empowered. So what does that mean? I gave a talk a couple of years ago at the Building Biology Conference, and I started to introduce these ideas. And for what I've been thinking about this for a while. Like how come we're fighting these agendas, and it seems like they're not going away, and we're not getting to the core of the problem. And even with in-power movement, we're having it's been a challenge, to be honest, to birth this and to bring it into being, and to have the funding, and to have, the everything necessary for this to fully, manifest into reality. It's been a challenge. Yeah. And what it's been leading me to see is, okay, well, how can we shift our consciousness so that we are still, obviously we want, and in our hearts, we want so much to have change for ourselves, for our family, for the world. But what I'm starting to see, Lloyd, is it has to start within.
Yes.
So, and what does that mean? Like, what does it mean, when Jesus, for example, talked about the kingdom within? What does it mean to shift from the idea of power and authority being outside of oneself, whether it's God or the government or the ability to make decisions or trust oneself or whatever? If that's outside oneself compared to if that's within. So I've been kind of asking these questions for a while and going in this direction. And, I coined it in that talk a couple of years ago as going from Newtonian activism, where we're pushing matter around. We're kind of like, there's a force acting upon another force. It's coming more from anger or frustration or like this to, and it's kind of like a turnoff for the people that are not already in that club, to quantum activism, where we're using intention. We're engaging in understanding that we are part of this experiment. And as we observe something, it tends to expand. And this isn't woo-woo. I mean, science knows this, that when there's a wave being observed, it snaps into position. It goes from superposition to an actual manifested particle location in time space, if it's being observed. And that really, is one example, but there's a lot of science and experimental understanding around this, that as we observe something and as we engage in intention, things change. So how can we, so to do that effectively, what I've realized is we have to understand and connect with the power within us. We can't do that effectively from a victim consciousness. And the paradox is, Lloyd, I mean, we're being bombarded with harmful, technologies and agendas, and it's not just wireless. I mean, everyone who's paying attention, you all know that there's like some crazy shit going down now. But the paradox is, like, even though all of this stuff is happening on the outside, it's wanting us to go into victim consciousness. It's wanting us to see ourselves as under it, so that we are appealing to it for remedy, for solution. So the paradox is that we actually have to go within and to do the inner work to connect our heart and mind to become one, like Jesus talked about. Let your eye be single. If your eye is single, your whole body is full of light. So if we can do that inner connective work, we can, like he talked about, use the kingdom is within, connect the kingdom within. And what I'm realizing, Lloyd, is that's where the magic happens. Like that's where the true creative effect can happen in our environment around us, in our immediate environment, in our family, and in, I believe, the world. When you look at people that are achieving success, both in the present and in past, they always had that, long-term success, creative success, things that benefit people, success. They always had that heart or that compassion. At least what I would determine is success and meaningful. So it's this. This is kind of the next phase of my work, is as I remain on board and pointing as many people as I can to the Empower movement. It's like, okay, I'm also working in parallel to generate awareness and go in this direction of what it truly means to be the change. What's the process that we can go through, and can we do it in a community setting? Can we come together in like a round table setting, and as many people who want to and are open to a process of a new perspective of what it truly means to be empowered. I'm not the expert on this. I don't know where it's all going to go. Honestly, I think the future is unwritten. I think that we're coming into this place of learning how to rewrite our future, Lloyd. I think that's where the hope comes from. I honestly think that we're being pulled through time by the higher aspect of ourselves, by that divine being, as part of a benevolent process to get us to wake up and realize that it's not the external. This movie is not about what's going on in the outside, what they are doing to us. This movie is about us coming into our power and changing this program here, doing it not from wishing or hoping or asking or pleading, but doing it from aligning and and intending and aligning with, I believe, what I believe is a greater pattern coming in that wants humanity to make it through, that wants to see these problems solved, that wants to bring into manifestation these technologies and these solutions and these social systems that no longer have to cause harm, because we've learned the lesson. We've maxed out this, evolutionary lesson on duality, right? We know that it's that playing the game like we have played it doesn't work. We know that being empowered doesn't work. Being disempowered doesn't work. So, and we're ready for the new. So that's the direction that my work is going, both within Empower Movement as an ambassador,
yes.
and outside of that. So
I'm glad you've
longer answer, I guess.
Well, no, I'm glad you've put that on the table, because we've not really talked about that. Mm-hmm. It is super important, and it is a higher level solution, because most of the things we've been talking about on the EMF Health Summit are, well, we've talked about the dangers, and we talked about practical hands-on solution, things that you do with your hands. But this is perhaps the most important solution. It's just when you explain this to people, it's like some people don't get it at all. And then the hope is that I do get it, by the way, and the hope is that some people will get it over time, will be able to comprehend the overwhelming importance of this. And it's not about EMFs. It's just about, how the world is evolving generally. And it's, for me, I'm listening to what you're saying. It's about being. It's actually about being. And what I mean by that, what is being? Well, being is your vibration. And again, if you're talking about vibration, what we're talking about? We're talking about energy and frequency. And to bring it back to these EMFs, that's what that is. It's these man-made frequencies. And this is a challenge, is that we are being assaulted by these man-made frequencies. And personally, I relate to what you're saying, because I went through the victimhood. I went through that person, why me? I went through, am I going crazy? All that. Mm-hmm. And then it was by doing so many different things, hands-on things, and then realizing that the hands-on things only took me so far, and then really to evolve that bit further is this realization that actually real change starts within. And, each day, each minute of every day is a decision about, well, am I going to look at this as being like the downtrodden person, the guy who's like, drawn the last straw? Or am I going to look at it as being, well, this is a challenge, but this overwhelming challenge, this unbelievable challenge is actually also an unbelievable opportunity. And so I think we can say this on a personal level as much as we can say it, on a society level, as much as we can say, for the whole world. And because you talked about Jesus, and it's, we don't even have to go back to religion. This is science. There is science on this.
Exactly.
And just for information, on my podcast, I've interviewed a number of people that have healed from extreme electrical hypersensitivity, and this is the kind of work they've done. In fact, this is the kind of work I've done, and I'm talking about, to name names, I'm talking about Lucy Sanford, building biologist, and I'm also talking about Maureen Richard, also in France, very educated lady, formerly worked for Radio France, who got sick, and completely overcame it, and is now helping other people overcome it through this being. So it does sound woo-woo, but it does work, and it is a longer term solution. So great information, and I encourage you to continue that, and this, heart-based solution. And there are other people doing this in other spheres, by the way. Again, just to reference some science, is a lady called Lynn McTaggart. I'm sure you've heard of her, who's got called Power of Eight, because
I'm listening to that right now.
We don't need to be, thousands of people even doing things to change the world. We can be very small groups.
Yeah.
In fact, we can be individuals if we get really good at it, who are changing the world just by being. Great information here, Josh. Any last comments you want to make before we close off, because we're running out of time?
Sure. Just really quickly, two things. So as far as EMF mitigation, Lloyd, like this, one of the reasons why I'm talking about more and more, like as you do the mid and long-term solution, do the short-term solution, because the more we can mitigate EMF, the more we can tap into higher levels of consciousness, has been my experience. And I think the science has shown that is if we have a quieter environment and we're getting less stimulated externally, then we can find and connect with the power within. Right, and we can preserve our body and boost our vitality, and all of this stuff helps. And secondly, just to throw an invite out there, there are some new projects coming forward that I would love to keep your audience aware of. So you can subscribe for free to my list, which is currently based on takebackyourpower.net, and separately also subscribe for free to inpowermovement.com, inpowermovement.com. And so that's what I would recommend in addition to the short-term solutions that we talked about.
Thank you so much, Josh Del Sol. Thank you so much for being part of the EMF Health Summit, and for, it's been fascinating and enlightening talking to you today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Lloyd. It's been great to be on your show, and thank you for all of your work. You're doing a fantastic job in spreading awareness and empowerment.
Thank you, sir. And for all of you who've joined us today, thank you for being part of this movement. My name is Lloyd Borrell. Stay tuned for the next session. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.